In the previous lecture, we took a look at how to create your own GitHub account and create your first repository, aka your first project on GitHub. So in that past video, you should have created your account and you should have your own repository. In my case, this is mine. It's called Raybot's example, and I'll use it to clone it or copy it onto my local computer, make some changes, and then push those changes back up onto GitHub. So to start, go ahead and navigate to your GitHub account, and then go ahead and navigate to your repositories section. So for me, let me go back to GitHub. So once you log in, you should see this screen. On the left-hand side, you should see a repositories section. And below that, you should see a list of all of your repositories or projects. In my example, it was this one here, Raybot's example. So yours will be named differently depending on how you named it. But now go ahead and click on this green button here. What we're going to do is we're going to copy this project onto our computer and then open it up using Visual Studio Code, make some edits, and push those edits back up to GitHub. So to start off, again, click on this green button and you'll see the option to copy this URL. So this URL, it'll look exactly the same for you. Well, everything after or everything before this .com here, this github.com will look exactly the same, but everything after this will be completely different. So this here is my GitHub username. You'll see your own username here when you look at this URL. And this here, this portion here at the end is the name of my project. So in my case, it's raybotsexample.git. So what you want to do is copy this link, because this link will tell Visual Studio Code where on the internet your project is. So now go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code. And on the left-hand side, you'll see a column with a couple of icons. The icon you want to look at and click on is source control. It looks like this, some three dots connected by a few lines. So click on that and then click on clone repository. So clone just means to copy, to use a URL, find a project and take that project and copy it onto your computer so that you can edit it. So click on that blue clone repository button, and then Visual Studio Code will ask you to provide a repository URL. And that's where you're going to paste that URL that you just copied. And so this is where we're telling Visual Studio Code where on the internet our project is, so that it knows what to copy. And once you paste that in, just go ahead and click enter. And now Visual Studio Code will ask you where on your computer do you want to store this project. I'll keep it simple and I'll keep it in my desktop. So I'm going to select desktop and then just select repository location. And that's it. So it copied the project over here on my desktop. And now it gives me the option of opening it. I'm going to click on open, and that's it. So it copied the project, and all of the project's contents are listed right here. So as of right now, we only have one file here called readme.md. And again, if we look at GitHub, and if we look at that project, we only have one file listed here. So let's add another file. Let's make another file and add it onto the project. So to do that, you can just right click on the project itself, so just anywhere in this little white space area, and click on new file. And you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it file1.txt. You always want to give your files extensions. And so what I mean by extensions is every single file on your computer has an extension to it. So .txt, .pdf is an extension. Docx, I think, is the extension for Word documents. I forgot the Excel extension. I think it's XML or XLM, something like that. CSV is another popular one. I'm just gonna keep it simple, have it be a text file, so .txt. We're gonna click on enter. And so now we've created a new file. And so once you create it, you'll notice that the file name is green. And so what green indicates is that this is a new file, a file that you've just created and that is not present on GitHub. So you have a copy of this project here, right? A copy of Raybot's example, this repository. You have a copy of this repository on your computer, but now your copy is different from the copy that lives on GitHub because you created a new file called file1.txt. So that's fine. You don't need to come back to that until a little later. First, we're going to take this new file and add something into it. So I'm going to say, this is a new file. I'm just going to leave it at that. Just add some text in there. All right, so now we've created a new file and we've got some text in that new file. And so now go back to the source control icon, click on that, and you'll see a tab called changes. And under this tab, you'll see a list of all the files that you've just changed. So right now we only have one change in one file. So if we click on that file, the screen will split into two. So on the left-hand side, you'll see all the changes of on that file that you've deleted. So if you delete a line in this file, that change will appear here in red on the left side. But we didn't delete anything from this file. We just created it and added that one line onto it. So on the right-hand side, you'll see all of the changes in that file that were actually added into it, highlighted in green. So in this case, we only added one line. This is a new file into this file. And so that's why it appears on the right side, highlighted in green. So let's actually make another change to this project. Let's open up the readme.md file and add another line, say, or a couple more lines. Actually, I'll just add one. And I'll say this is a new line. Actually, I'm also going to remove the title from this file. All right. So now if I go back to source control, under changes, we see two files because now we've updated or we've changed two files. We've changed file one, which again, we just basically just created the file and added this one single line onto it. And we've also modified the readme.md file. And it shows us exactly what we did here. So it says, okay, well, on the left-hand side, again, are all of the changes that pertain to us deleting things from the file. In this case, we removed something on line 1, specifically this little pound symbol, a space, and Raybot's example. And we replaced it with this is a new line. So again, on the right-hand side, you'll see all the changes that you added. And on the left-hand side, you'll see all the changes that you removed. So, and this makes sense because again, we just basically deleted this, this title from the readme.md file, and we replaced it with this. So now our file looks like this. Right, so we've made all of the changes we wanted to make. So now we're gonna go back to this source control icon, and we're gonna do three things. We're gonna do, first, we're gonna do what's called adding our changes to staging. Then we're gonna commit those changes, and then we're gonna push those changes. So these three steps are steps that you'll always need to make and do once you make changes onto your files or your code on GitHub. And we'll walk through this right now. So the first one again is adding your changes to staging. And so all that means is that you're specifying which of your changes you're ready to push up to GitHub. So in our case, we have this list of changes. So we have two files that were changed, file1.txt and readme.md. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the plus sign of the files that we want to add to what's called our staging area. So I want to add both of the files. So I'm going to click on the plus sign for both. Okay, so now I just clicked it on the file1.txt file, and I see a new tab called staged changes, which means that I've added this file onto my staging area. And now I also want to add my readme.md file onto my staging area. So now we have both files in our staging area. And so staging area is just a way for Git to know, or a way for you to tell Git which files you are about to push up to GitHub. So for us, it's just going to be these two files for now, file1.txt and readme.md. So now that these two files are in the staging area, Git knows which two files it's going to go ahead and bundle and push out to GitHub. But before we do that, we need to explain what we did. We want to explain what changes we made and why we made them. And the reason for this is because when you're working with GitHub and Git, you're typically working with a team of other people who are also working on the same project as you. So these can be classmates, these can be colleagues, these can be maybe your teachers, but they'll want to know what changes you're making to your code and why you're making them. So to do that, we need to commit our changes. So what we just did right now is tell Git which files we're going to push, but that's all it knows. Now we need to tell Git why we're adding these two files and what changes we made and why we made them, so that in the future, when some human beings come in and read our code, they understand why we did what we did. So to do that, you want to click on this ellipses here and click on commit. So now Visual Studio will ask you for that message, that explanation that I just mentioned of what you did and why you did it. So what we did here was we modified, let's say updated the README file and created file one for demo purposes. So your commit message, in other words, the explanation of what you did, it should be really, really short. So max like 2 sentences, but even 2 sentences can be a little too long. So try to keep it to just 1 sentence, but keep it really short, because in the future, when someone else who's working with you on the same project looks at these messages, at these commits is what it's called, they're not going to want to read paragraphs of you explaining what you did. They just want to read one simple message, one simple sentence that explains what you did and why you did it. So for us, we updated the README file and created a file one for demo purposes. That's pretty concise. So let's go ahead and click on enter. And that's it. We've committed our changes. So now we're ready to push. And so to push a commit, it just means that you are taking all the changes that you just made to your files and you're making them final by uploading them onto GitHub. So to really drive this point home, I'm just going to go ahead and refresh GitHub, refresh the repository on GitHub here to show you that it's still the same. It's still only holding the readme.md file, because we haven't pushed any of our changes yet. But now I'm going to go ahead and push these changes. So again, I'm going to click on this ellipses and then click on push. And so that'll take my commit and it'll upload all of my changes onto GitHub. And so now if I refresh this, I should see the changes that I just made locally on my computer here on Visual Studio Code up here on GitHub now, living on the internet. So yeah, we see the readme.md file. So in the past, it held, I think, the name of the project, which is Raybot's example. But again, we deleted that and we replaced it with this is a new line. And we also see another file called file1.txt, which contains the sentence, this is a new file. So that's just a walkthrough of how you can clone a GitHub project onto your local computer, open it up using Visual Studio Code, make changes, commit them, and push them back up to GitHub. So again, if you run into any issues, feel free to reach out. If you have any questions, feel free to post them on Teams. And in the next lecture, we'll take a look at additional examples of how to commit, how to make changes, and how to push them to GitHub.